Former Prime Minister Helen Clark's bid to become the next head of the United Nations appears to be on the rocks. This despite the efforts of Prime Minister John Key and Foreign Affairs Minister Murry McCully. To discuss what Ms Clark's chances actually are, international relations expert Robert Patman joins me now. Good evening.
Good evening, Rebecca.
What's the latest you've heard about Ms Clark's chances of getting this job?
Well, what we know is that we've just gone through the third round of the so-called ballots, we must make clear that this is a ballot amongst the 15 members of the UN Security Council, not the membership as a whole, which is 193 in strength. We know that, I think from Helen Clark's point of view, a slightly disappointing performance. She hoped to push forward, but she's actually, in terms of the pecking order, she came second. She came seventh the second time round. She's now come seventh again. The good news is the field will contract because it looks like the bottom two candidates will now drop out, and that could change the dynamics of the contest. So you can't always predict from one round to the next exactly how it's going to go.
What are Prime Minister John Key and Minister McCully actually doing to help her bid? Oh,
I think they've been talking to leaders and actually lobbying them. And unfortunately, Mr Obama politely said that he was supporting, his administration was supporting the Argentinian Foreign Minister, Susana Marcora. And the Russians have been quite upfront. They're supporting the Bulgarian candidate. They want an Eastern European to be the next UN Secretary General. And the Chinese position is not quite clear. And I think the British and the French are supporting, it seems, the former Portuguese Foreign Minister Antonio Guterres. So at the moment, Helen Clark is coming. You know, if she's going to make progress, it's got to be because the first preferences of the P5 group, the permanent members of the Security Council, they can't prevail because they can veto each other's first choice, you see, so that can lead to some movement. She may come through as the compromise candidate.
Before the ballot started, she was widely rumoured to be in with quite a chance of getting this role. Was that just a made-up rumour?
No, not at all.
So what's changed?
Helen Clark is probably, if the General Assembly picked the nomination, she'd probably be in the top three, even the top two. She is widely admired and regarded as very competent. But the thing is, the permanent 5 members of the Security Council are not necessarily representative of the UN as a whole. The reason is they have a privilege that no one else has, which is the veto, and they jealously guard that privilege, and they want somebody as UN Secretary General, more of a flexible diplomat, a figurehead, if you want to be unkind, rather than a strong leader. So in a sense, you know, Helen Clark may be a victim of her own competence and also her vision. She clearly wants to make the UN work. And from the P5's group, it already works, but it doesn't, for the rest of the UN membership, it doesn't work particularly well.
Do you think there's a bit of an old boys network thing going on here, sort of, oh, well, you know, I'll give you my vote if you do this for me when you get in?
I'm not sure about that, Rebecca. I think I think Russia and the US are really conflicted in what they want. And one of the things is, as the field contracts, and by the way, we can go through this process of these straw ballots this can go on. There's no fixed number. They just hope to come up with a name they can agree on. But I think we have to go through several more rounds before we get clarity. So I think Helen Clark's position, to sum up, is she's got to win from behind, if you see what I mean. And she's got to win when the P5 members recognise they can't get their first choice and they look upon her. I think the Americans would certainly see Helen Clark as an acceptable second choice. I'm not sure the Russians would, and it would depend on what the British. I think the British probably would as well. French, I don't know.
What would it mean for New Zealand if she was successful?
I think it would mean a lot, because I think if Helen Clark got to if she got in the top job in the UN, she would, I think, be a dynamic leader, and I think she would make the UN work better. In other words, I think the major impact would be on the UN itself, but being a small player that needs an effective international organisation, that also works for us as well.
Professor of International Relations, Robert Patman, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.